dedicate tonight's talk to two important women in my life. I made a commitment to one and I married the other. It was a hard thing to explain to my wife, but once she understood, then she was behind me all the way, or she was with me all the way. Does anyone know what a biological fuel station is, or how it operates, or what it might be? It's what it is as an entity. Anyone know? Anyone like to offer up an idea? Basically, it is a center where often research is being conducted, or scientists are housed and conduct research on-site or off-site. And this was established here near Waupaca before I was a science teacher for the school district of Waupaca, not knowing if I was ever going to be able to teach in a school district. So I figured I'd invent my own job. It worked out well because it's still operating. Basically, it is a place where I often took care of the property while I was in high school. After I moved to Waupaca in 1967, my parents became friends of Norm and Charlotte Sawyer, the first woman I made a commitment to. And after she lost her husband, she asked me to take care of her home and property while she was away on trips. So I would sleep on the floor and take care of her dog and cat and just walk the property and get to know the neighborhood well. And so she often asked me back, never ever expecting to drop anchor there and return and make it my home. I ended up leaving Waupaca area and moved to Alaska and worked there for 2 years. And when I returned, I didn't have a place to live, and I was looking for an old farmhouse to live in, at least to try to find a place to live. And Charlotte told me that the person who purchased her property backed out on the purchase and she was renting the farmhouse. And I said, oh, would it be possible? Yes, at $300 a month. Wow, pretty good in 1982. For her birthday the following year, she dropped the rent to $150 a month. And I said, Charlotte, what's this all about? And she said, I would like you to buy the place. So I want you to start raising some money for a down payment because you're renting with option to buy now. Oh, all right. Now, again, I didn't have a teaching certificate. I got my teaching certificate in 1985, so I was going back to school to get that certificate, and I had a strong biological background. But I had some idea after talking about teas. We would always have a spring tea at her cabin on Emmons Creek Road, and she said that she wanted to save the property, that her husband and she and her in-laws owned about a square mile of land at one time, and they sold it off often to agriculture, but the last 40s she wanted to prevent from ever being developed. And could I find a way to make that happen? I went, wow, I don't know. I will make you one promise that once I make the purchase, that will be a life's journey for me to make sure that it never gets developed. The other option was, she said, well, you know the home you're moving into was built in 1856. Oh, no, I didn't know that. And my relatives owned it. I said, I see. So she said, I'd like you to save the house. When I told that to my father, he said, you're nuts. Why don't you just tear it down and start over? And I said, but Dad, it's got a lot of history. And I looked at the abstract and I said, wow, if I stay here long enough, I could be the second longest resident in this house. And I could be part of that history. So the third commitment I made to Mrs. Sawyer was to allow her nephews, she had no children, but she had 4 nephews, and to allow her nephews to continue to deer hunt on the property. And I said, I will, as long as I'm on the property, allow them to have an annual deer hunt there, and they can still have that family tradition to continue. So I have a bunkhouse there. And they come and they hunt with their sons and friends, and it works out quite well. So in 1985, approximately, we sat down at tea and we love to be able to do some applied sciences in the field, not always in the classroom, on a bunch of different investigations. And she said, well, let's try that. Let's go that route. So in 1990, we were officially established. So between 1985 and 1990, we established ourselves as the Waupaca Field Station. We called ourselves the Waupaca Field Station because we weren't sure if we were going to focus on the biological sciences or we were going to cover archaeology and geology and other things, and we have done all of those also, but our main focus is biology. And the reason why is when I was residing on the property, I was doing a lot of botanical surveys, and I was also working at Hartman Creek State Park, so I had full access to Hartman Creek State Park and to Emmons Creek Fisheries Area, which is approximately 4,000 public acres on 3 sides of this property. So it's a key linking property between those state properties and a buffer for some of those activities, and then their properties are a buffer to what she had there. I was able to map out approximately 7 relic botanical communities that were still operating and were only grazed and were never plowed. So we had a pretty good plant diversity on these 7 sites. So working on that, I ended up getting a grant from the Nature Conservancy, and we studied 38 savannas and sand prairies and sand barrens in the region between Portage, Waupaca, and Waushara counties to get a feel for what was actually here. And then I went down to Madison and I actually purchased the entire collection of the state archives of the original survey records. So through microfiche, I can just get a really good idea from all their field notes what our backyard looked like and compare it to other parts of the state when it came down to the definition of a savanna or a sand prairie. And we're very, very blessed because we have 2 very unique plant communities that are still existing and eking out a living and are succeeded and overgrown in many cases, called oak barrens, a type of oak savanna that's on very dry sands, and another which John Curtis, the botanist and author of Vegetation of Wisconsin, did not officially recognize in his book in 1959, called a sand prairie, but some of his graduate students now who have PhDs and reanalyzed his data now officially recognize sand prairies, which is a unique community again on xeric or very dry sands. Next, please. So what we did is we started out trying to recruit manpower, free manpower, and that would be students. So when I got hired in 1989, and then in 1990 I went to the superintendent and I said, hey, you know, when I was in school we had a very strong chess club, and my brother was in the ham radio club, and we had a science club. Would that be possible? No. Really? No. So would you mind if I started my own? No. You'll have to support it on your own. I said, that's fine. I said, then I'm not going to promise that I'm going to be servicing only Waupaca students. If I can get students from any other school district, any other teacher who wants to link up, I'm just going to be focusing on any manpower I can get. So we talked about it, and we named ourselves, oops, can we go back? Club Ecos. Defining it as a clubhouse, ecos meaning house, and it's a clubhouse, and it's an ecologically based science club. That means we're outdoors most of the time doing a variety of different things. So as you can read here, we work on a whole variety of different projects, and I started at, well, I guess you'd have to say upper elementary, which I found wasn't as practical as just middle school, high school, and then I had so many high school students entering college wanting to come back that my base started becoming a little bit more permanent and kids coming back. So that was one of my major projects we started. Okay. Another one was a major linkage that I wanted to attract scientists who were working on their masters or PhDs. And in the 1980s, I was very confused as to what kind of little blue butterfly was all over the oak savanna and the sand prairies, and they were not in Peterson's field guide at that time. It was not a recognized species or subspecies. We knew there was a Melissa blue, but we didn't know that there was a Carner blue butterfly. and that's the famous butterfly that's in our neck of the woods. And right now in the nation, on a national scale, Wisconsin and New York are the only two states who still have strong, viable populations. Almost every other state has shown major declines with the global climate change we're experiencing. And central Wisconsin, this property is in the National Recovery Plan. Because we've been working with it so long, they decided to place us there and put this responsibility on us to work with the states and the feds to do that. So what we ended up doing is getting a variety of different scientists coming and working on a variety of aspects of either carnivorous butterflies or oak savannas or sand prairies, and then the Club Ecos students would work directly with them as research assistants. There's no better time for me just to make that linkage and then step back and watch that synergy work. It was just so wonderful, and it still is when we get something going on another project. Next, please. In 1974, that's kind of attracted me back to this property. In '74, Charlotte let me start banding birds there. And when I would come back and take care of the place, I would continue to band birds and get new birds and birds I hadn't seen for 7 years or so. And I thought, whoa, hey, we got something going on here. So we established the Emmons Creek Bird Observatory and Ringing Station, and it's been operating since 1974. And we concentrate on neotropical migratory birds, so tanagers, orioles, indigo buntings, but we cover a lot of the permanent resident birds too, and we learn a lot about what's going on. So that's one of the programs we've got. Oh, I guess there's another project. I found a partner, and she was very instrumental in making this successful. When I told her that I made a commitment to another woman, she said, could you please explain? And I told her, yeah, there's these 3 things I got to work on in my life, and you're kind of signing on to this. And I said, I'm stuck to this house, I'm stuck to this property, and if you consent, then you're stuck to this too. And she says, I'm with you. So she's been with me all the way for some time. We also ended up taking some of these scientists with us, as well as some of our students, on educational expeditions. So we've traveled all over the place, internationally and across our continent, to get a feel for not only teaching some of the subjects, but learning from these scientists who are specialized in these areas, and then bringing that back and using it with our student base. And we get scientists to come back just because they are so interested in doing this kind of thing. So, next please. Professional development. One of the most important things that we're not seeing today, I'm really feeling bad about, and it's because of budgetary cuts, and it's about the less emphasis on education and preparing teachers. I just got an award. Thank you very much. I have too many. I feel good about that, but I feel so often that our younger teachers have not been treated the same way I was treated. I had mentors. We don't have the mentorship programs like we used to. I had all these opportunities for preparation in and out of the classroom, and I'm trying to work with WSST, Wisconsin Society of Science Teachers, and other sources to try to offer these to other teachers. So I bring teachers out onto the property, and we try to do those kinds of in-service and professional development so that they get this kind of exposure. So often teachers are comfortable in the classroom, but not taking kids outside, and that's what my job is, to try to get them outside. Okay? And some others, so you can see all those different things we try to offer. Okay. Our location. Pointer. Hope I know how to use this now. Push on the end. Turn it. What do we need to do?
Is it button on the top?
Button on the top?
Like where your phone wants to be?
Pointer. Oh, there it is. Okay. So we are seated right there, between these zones, these ecological landscapes, and we can see where the Wisconsin UW plant study areas are. A lot of them clustered in the south, very few where we are, but there are 2 counties in Wisconsin with the highest plant diversity. That's Eau Claire County and Waupaca County, which is really interesting. And the reason why that is because Waupaca County, almost in its entirety, is within Curtis's tension zone. Same thing with Eau Claire County. What is Curtis Detention Zone? It is an amalgamation of southern influences and northern influences and how they overlap and meld together. So we have a very high diversity of these southern species trying to reach north and these northern species trying to reach south, and that's why we have such high diversity, which makes it really exciting when you look at the plant lists and the wildflowers that we have here. Okay. 1997, Mrs. Sawyer passed away. I had an option to purchase the rest of the property and unify it. We were in a tight spot because she had not finalized everything on paper. We were very afraid that we might lose the opportunity to unify the original farm and control about 170 acres. But after getting an attorney and fighting a local attorney and a realtor who wanted to develop the property into a subdivision next to Hartman Creek State Park, we were able to then send a pie-in-the-sky idea to President George W. Bush. No kidding. How did we do that? We contacted our local biologists, both with the DNR and Fish and Wildlife Service, and they said, what do you want to do? I said, well, we're trying to lock this land up so it'll never be developed, but we also want to partner with the feds and the state. You're willing to do that with this? I said, I can't take the land with me. You know, it's going to be yours in the future, folks. It's going to be yours. So we sent this proposal through the Fish and Wildlife Service to Washington, D.C. It went to Congress. Congress looked over and said, well, okay, we'll go with that. And they sent it, and George W. Bush signed off. It came back to, at that time, Governor Doyle. It took him about 2 months to sit on it, and he signed off on it. And now, 155 acres of the 169 acres is now officially protected on the highest level in Wisconsin under the State Natural Areas Program. We control 155 acres of the 200-acre state natural area that's there, and we partner with Emmons Creek Fisheries Area and Hartman Creek State Park. And we're trying to do a landscape scale restoration, and that entails cutting trees and letting trees move in, doing burns, make some sanitary openings, and reduce the canopy so that we have more of an open, barren savanna condition. And boy, have we seen responses on birds and many other organisms. So it's working quite well. Thank you. We are also linked to a variety of different monitoring programs in Wisconsin. They've now unified it under the DNR called the Wisconsin Citizen-Based Monitoring Network. So if you're interested in monitoring wolves or salamanders or you name it, we do that locally, and we can link you up to other parts of the state and other people. I want to try to get more into bats, and we're looking at writing some grants so we can get some bat monitoring equipment and do some floats on rivers and on some of the chain lakes, because there's still some old structures out there supporting bat populations, and there's been a major decline. I don't know, I'm 60. I still feel youthful, but I really feel fortunate that I was born when I was, because I remember when there used to be hundreds of bats at night. And now we're down to handfuls of bats and maybe no bats at all. And that applies to a lot of amphibian populations also. So a lot has changed, and a lot of our children and grandchildren will never experience what we got to see as kids, which is really too bad. But at least we can get some communities protected and then the populations there secured. Yes?
And what do you attribute that to? The decline in bat population?
What can we do?
No, what do you attribute to the decline to?
Oh, there's a lot of, well, we do know that there's white nose syndrome, which is a fungus that is spreading from the east into large colonial sites, especially caves, and it's a fungus that can wipe out the entire colony. It's a respiratory, it gets into the respiratory system and kills them. We do know that we have a few sites in Wisconsin with it now, but it hasn't become widespread because we are locking off a lot of these mines and caves with cages to prevent humans from introducing the fungus. And then people have to go in with suits to be sure that they're sterile in a way, and then they go in and monitor the bats, and then they lock the rest of the public out. There are other cases where know that there's pesticides in our environment, and things have changed so dramatically since the 1960s and 1970s with Monsanto and DuPont, etc. And Silent Spring and Rachel Carson's book, and if you ever want to go back and reread it and feel depressed, and then know what has happened since, it's even more depressing. So there's a lot more chemicals in our environment, and I attribute that to cancers in us too, because of what is in our foods and in our environment. Okay. As Mr. Jansen indicated, in 1980, I guess it would be 1986, again, before I was a teacher, a bunch of unemployed biologists and geologists and soil scientists decided we would start a corporation where we would do environmental consulting. And we called it EnvironTech. And we were each responsible for soliciting our own contracts and learning where we could get our foot in the door and compete with the big shots, the big consulting firms, on a local basis. And I've been one of the most active ones, and I've been doing a whole variety of different projects, mostly biological, one archaeological, to a point where monies coming in are then supporting the Waupaca Biological Field Station. And in some cases, I have what are called job training grants to students, and I hire student teams to then go out and learn this job and get paid minimum wage or close to minimum wage, but they get an experience other than pushing burgers at Culver's or whatever, you know. Yes?
I keep seeing the initials KBB on your slides. What does that
Oh,
stand for?
Carter Blue Butterfly.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's just a long name that I shortened to make it fit on the page. So a lot of Carter Blue Butterfly, the Fish and Wildlife Service, because they know that we did a lot of, in fact, we were the only non-collegiate Carter Blue Butterfly trained research team in the nation for over 10 years. And right now, we still have quite a few people trained to do the recovery counts every spring. So we're still up and doing that. And we're running out of money. That happens with everything. You find it's an endangered species. We have a little bit of money to designate it as endangered. We have very little money to recover it. So then you find there's a little bit of money to use, and then the rest of the time is volunteer to try to bring that animal back. So these pictures, this was Fawkes Brothers Marsh, right off of County Highway E. If you're not familiar with that property, it is a commercial peat mining operation. So we hear about iron ore or copper ore that may be coming out of the Gogebic Pinocchio Range in northern Wisconsin. Well, we mine sand, as we know for frac sand mining. We've been mining sand for hundreds of years for roads, etc. So it's and lead and zinc. That's why we became badgers. So mining is nothing different in Wisconsin. It's just that our population is getting bigger. The resource is more pressure on it, and there's money to be made. So that's why we have so much frac mining. But we have also peat mining. So they dig up a very unique, unbelievably unique, a 9,000-year-old basin, an upland basin that captures water and overflows to become the headwaters of 4 different streams. 2 that go into the Little Wolf River and 2 that go into the Waupaca River. By mining this, they have converted it into a more open wetland instead of a wet soil that used to be a peat farm. And now it's got these impoundments and very healthy fish populations and a lot of birds, and that's what we're there to show the Corps of Engineers that after the mining operation, maybe the species of animals are actually benefiting more than when it was 9 feet or 12 feet of wet peat. So, yes?
Bob, is that peat mine north of Waupaca?
East of Waupaca, on the bend north of Nemeth's and the what is the name of that trailer park? Mobile home park. So as it bends to the east, just north, if you go directly north, it's 200 and some acres in size and getting larger every year because they buy up a 40, mine it, and then convert it over. Yes?
Is your field station completely in Waupaca County?
No, it is 60 acres is in Portage County and the rest is in Waupaca County. So the 440s that were part of the original farm were 240s in Portage and 240s in Waupaca County, and then we were able to add more on. Boy, it'd be nice to get another 1,000. No. But remember, it's going to be yours. It's going to be either sold or given back to the DNR because it's protected. Okay, next please. Another income generating activity, fully insured, is fire restorations, where we do commercial burns for people who have installed conservation reserve grasslands or any other grasslands. So we actually underburn savannas, and we do, well, the largest we've ever done is 40 acres in our area, which is quite large. But most of them are somewhere between 5 and 15 acres in size. And we then make recommendations as to, hey, do you want to burn that? We would recommend maybe only burning half of it this year and waiting 2 years and burning the other half and using that other half as a refuge for your insects that would reoccupy the burned area. You don't want to wipe out, you could wipe out an entire carnival butterfly population if you burn an entire area all at once. So we recommend patchwork, and that's how we manage at Waupaca Biological Field Station. We patchwork burn sections, okay? We also install prairies and work with people to convert savannas back. So if you have an old field, we actually collect seed on the property. That's one thing that's nice about our agreement with the feds. We need to find a way to generate enough money to pay our taxes, which is about $8,000 a year, and make enough money to then sell seed. That's how we also to sell seed so that we can use it to restore other properties. So we have about 15 people in our area that are partners for the carnival butterfly recovery. So when we were mapping out carnival butterfly sites, we would approach the property owner and, are you with the DNR? No, we're not. I'm just a teacher. Well, what are you doing? Well, these are my students, and we're looking at carnival butterflies, and we're trying to conserve this butterfly. Oh, come on in. Have some coffee. I'm not DNR, so that worked out really well. So basically, we get our foot in the door. We introduce them to a program called Partners for Fish and Wildlife through the feds, which will give you 100% costs shared, meaning that you don't have to put a penny up as long as you're putting your property aside for 10 to 25 years and this restoration activity. So it works out quite well, and we're seeing good work with carnival butterflies and those communities. Okay? Stewardship. That's our one of our main focuses is stewardship of the land and its resources, and of course the house. So once we were able to secure the property, the next project was to work on the old house. And next one. We tore the house apart. Found out there wasn't that much rot, but we had to put a whole new foundation under the house. And then with evaluations and 3 energy audits, this 1856 farmhouse with total window replacement is a now 5+ star energy efficient home, 139% more efficient than a 2012 contemporary house built to building standards. So my wood use is 90% less to heat the home. And I'm sure Wisconsin Public Service doesn't like me. That's why they're going to find ways of taxing me, because I also have a solar system to service 100% of my electrical use, as well as feeding back to the grid so we can have green energy for you. But they're going to start taxing us now and placing extra fees on us. So I'm exploring the idea of going off-grid entirely. Sorry, folks. I mean, if they want to be that way, then I can't offer free green energy for you guys to offset anything that you are producing. So I'm actually exploring that idea, just because the way the corporations want higher dividends on us. And they're going to be upping your costs too, because they're going to be putting a tax on you for just using their electrical lines, which apparently was free all these years. I don't know. Okay, next. On property research, you can see a wide range of things, and people say, you do so much stuff with insects. Well, we started with ants, actually. E.O. Wilson was something I got to know later, but I, in the city of Madison where I grew up, spent lots of time in the city gutters studying ants as a little tyke. And it fascinated me, and then when we got to central Wisconsin, we found large mound-building ants, like you see in the bottom right. They are super instrumental in the operation of the understory and even canopy of your oaks and your prairies or your grasslands. If we got rid of our ants, we'd be in deep trouble. So we've done a lot of work with ants and ant colonies and their importance. In fact, these mound-building ants secure the life of many larvae carnivore butterflies. They actually protect them. They take honeydew from them, and we have this relationship between the two species where the carnivore actually have a higher survival rate because of the ants. Okay? Soils and hydrology. Portage County is doing more, I think, than Waupaca County at this point just because of the deep well irrigation systems, but Waupaca County is threatened too. But it's really important to see where we are located in relationship. This is Portage County, you can see here. Oops. And we are right in this corner. In fact, the southwest corner of our property is the lowest point in Portage County, which is, I never knew that fact, but the hydrologist told us that. Where Emmons Creek crosses, that's the lowest point. And we don't have a lot of problems other than maybe high nitrate from well upstream in the groundwater, but otherwise we're in really good shape in our part of the county. When we get farther south and farther east with more irrigation, then we have some more problems. But it's interesting to do the soil work because there's a lot of glacial influence here, and that's what keeps our waters very safe and secure. Whenever I travel internationally, I take probably 3 gallons of my own well water. I pay extra for because I know I've got secure, tasty water, and I have to taste urban water as I travel through countries or other states. Okay? Oak savanna and sand prairie. Again, savanna, imagine a grassland with scattered, highly scattered shrubs, American hazel, beaked hazel, a few dogwoods, and the rest is a scattered opening of oaks, where you have anywhere between 30 and 80% canopy. So as the sun is shining above us, you'll have a hard time finding a spot not to be directly in the sun, but you can find some spots where there's 80% canopy where you're a little bit cooler on a hot day, where most of the time it's less than that. When it gets below 30%, then you're getting more into either what's considered to be a much more open savanna or a scrub prairie, where you have little scrub oaks scattered with grasslands. And we have a wide range of highly adapted plants to live in this, and this is where we collect our seed and try to reestablish more. Okay? Caribou butterfly, federally endangered, reaches from the east, New Jersey, through New York, across all the Great Lakes over into Minnesota. In the time period we've been studying it, we've lost them in Ohio, we lost them in Minnesota, we lost them in Ontario, we lost them in Illinois, we lost them in Indiana, but they've been reintroduced in Ohio. They've been reintroduced into Indiana. Those populations are just eking out a living, but Wisconsin has the highest number of sites, 300 some sites, and the highest densities. And then the airport, I'm trying to think of the airport in New York. Well, anyway, one airport in New York covers a pretty good area, and they have good caribou butterflies there. So like I said, New York and Wisconsin are the last vestiges of good habitat to keep that butterfly going. Okay? You may have seen me up and down the Waupaca River, Little Wolf River. We've been putting radio transmitters on these turtles for since 1987. They're taking the Blandings turtles off the endangered species list or threatened species list just because a PhD candidate has found them more evenly distributed across the state than once we thought, but we do know that the reproduction is low. We recommend that they remain on the threatened species list because the reproduction is so low, but the wood turtle remains on the threatened species list, and we've been studying them from the Portage County line all the way down to the Wolf River, on the Waupaca River, the Walla Walla Creek, and the Little Wolf River, and we have over 200 turtles marked, and we've had more than 35% of that 200 animals with radio transmitters, some for as many as 4 years in a row. So we have lots of neat secrets about how these turtles make a living every year. Okay. Bat mammal surveys. We've been doing lots of Sherman trap, live trapping, to find out where we might have some prairie deer mice, prairie voles, some rare ones in central Wisconsin. We're still looking for some Franklin's ground squirrels. We do know that they're farther west, but there are some indicators that are still out there, and we're trying to find out more about how well they're doing in Madison. DNR is interested, but of course, who cares? Where's the money? It's in white-tailed deer. So, you know, you're just going to have to do this kind of stuff on a volunteer basis. But before the Veterans Home converted all their 1880s wooden historical buildings to brick buildings, there were massive colonies of bats in those buildings. And having grown up at the Veterans Home, I got up in the attic, so I got to see these, and it was very, very neat. But things have changed a lot again. Okay. These three groups are, I guess you'd have to say, flag groups. The DNR is putting a lot of emphasis on them because we're seeing declines in their major indicators. We do have one surprise. A good friend working from the DNR actually found a new species of dragonfly never described here in Wisconsin. So he has his name on that species now, which is quite interesting. But some of these dragonflies are very specific to certain pH and certain aquatic systems. So as we convert wetlands to dry, or whatever we're doing to convert these wetlands, we're losing a lot of these species. Robber flies are very unique. These may be flies that you don't see often, but you might be up in an open field and they may be hovering in front of your face. And it looks like they're annoying you, but they're a predatory fly and they're eating mosquitoes around you. They're fascinating species. And then the tiger beetles too, the bottom right hand you can see, we have maybe 14 species of those, and about 3 or 4 of those are threatened or endangered, and we're learning more about those on the sand barrens. And another predatory, they fly quickly, but they're on the ground hunting a lot, so they're interesting. That's another interesting species to study. Okay. Bees, everybody has heard of the colony collapse disorder. When I started in 1980s, the packages were $10, now they're $68. It's getting to be very expensive just to get started and up and running, but we're trying to learn more about that, and the Department of Ag has, I think, put about $5 million into Wisconsin to try to help beekeepers learn more about how we can eliminate the colony collapse disorder. But we're also interested in comparing that to our bumblebees because they're important pollinators. The bumblebees are very cold tolerant, where our honeybees are still in the colonies. The bumblebees are out still foraging when honeybees are shivering. So we're trying to find out how we can get not only the, I guess you'd have to say, paper mining bees that you don't see them in paper tubes, or the bumblebees more. So we often, if we find a bumblebee colony in an old bluebird box, we leave it there. Just because we know that they need that security and they need that help. Okay. Spiders, solitary wasps, antlions, human wasps, all highly adapted, very interesting groups. And what we do is, I'm not afraid of contacting a professor at a Natural History Museum in New York or a Smithsonian Institution with questions. It's just great when you have students who are just mind-boggled with ideas. And they say, put down some questions. And then I'll just send those questions to these big shot scientists. I have no idea, I can't answer all these questions. And then they are so nice to take the time to write us back and give us some suggestions and set up experiment. It's just fantastic to do that. So, so if you see it in the bottom left-hand corner, that's an antlion, and they actually capture ants. They fall into those cones of sand, and the antlion, you can see with its big jaws, are hidden in that bottom cone, and they eat the ants that fall in. So just fascinating. And they look like a dragonfly. There's the adult form of the antlion is here. So it looks like a dragonfly. Here's the larval form, and here's the ant traps that they make in our loose sands. So look around at your feet, get down on the kids level, and you'll make these discoveries, okay? Again, one of my fun things is to learn more about ant mounds, and I got permission from the author to borrow these diagrams, but their mounds are a lot like our lungs. And it's very interesting to see how they make it through the winter, and how they start new colonies, daughter colonies in the area, and how much influence they have, like I said, not just on the ground foraging, but they go well up into the canopy of the trees and forage. Yes?
I had a mound like that, and it's completely gone and dug out.
Skunks.
Skunks.
We made a mistake 2 or 3 years in a row, and it took us, what we were doing is we were flagging these mounds in high grass so you could spot them and go in and study them more. And the flags were high enough that the skunk would go, oh, another one. Oh, another one. Restaurants, advertisements, let's go. And we were seeing entire areas being wiped out, and we were going, what is going on here? But so we had to find other ways of doing this, and GPS works now well, because you just plug it in and go, oh yeah, here it is. Oh, there it is. So you don't have to have a flag. But it was so nice in the old days when you could do that, but now you can't trust those darn skunks. So, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, go back one. Here's something that I feel really good about. In the early years, we had a PhD, Cynthia Lane, and she was so interested in the kids' curiosities and the importance of ants to carnival butterflies that we got a bunch of keys, and the kids I got a bunch of microscopes, and we determined that we had 39 different species of ants just in our area. And there's probably more. It's just that we didn't get out and trap as many as we were focusing just in carnival butterfly areas. So it gives you an idea of how much diversity is out there. Okay? Insect predators and parasitoids. Anybody know what a parasitoid is? Oftentimes it's a little wasp that lays an egg in a larval form like a caterpillar. So what's really neat about these is they are major threats to carnival butterfly larvae and other moth and butterfly larvae, and some are serious mimickers. So they actually have body forms and actually pheromones that imitate an ant. So they'll come up and say, hey, I look like you, I smell like you. And the ant goes, oh, yeah, great, I need to take a break. Can you take over? Sure, no problem. So the ant leaves and the larvae is dead. So we have what are called assassin bugs and ambush bugs. Ambush bugs work differently, but assassin bugs actually go out and find ways of getting around some of these defenses that other animals use to protect themselves. Okay? Our neotropical birds, again, you're invited if you're interested. The whole month of May, every weekend, we open up the field station there for banding. Natural Resources Foundation now, we're offering tours for those folks too. And then you get to handle the birds, you get to photograph the birds and release them, and then we try to teach you one of about 105 languages to say farewell when you release your bird. So if you start with Spanish, you can't use it again. You got to go to Tagalog, which is the base language of the Philippines, or we could try Mandarin or Cantonese. No, anyway, whatever. We still have a whole list that you can use to do that. So, okay, next. Aquatic macroinvertebrates. We have hosted Trout Unlimited and some of the stream monitoring groups to set up ways of monitoring the macroinvertebrates in some of our streams, like Emmons Creek, which is Emmons Creek, if you're not aware of it, it's one of those quiet little streams that nobody really pays attention to, but it's the only stream in Wisconsin that has an inland anadromous brown trout population. Now, anyone know what anadromous means? I'm not trying to impress you, it's just a scientific term. Anadromous means that the trout are migrating from a large body of water up a stream to spawn. So we have anadromous trout and salmon in Lake Michigan that come up streams, but this is an entirely inland system where we have, I'm sorry, I'm gonna let you know, 36-inch brown trout coming from the chain of lakes up this little creek, and if they can't make it through the shoals, they lay on their side like a big salmon and work their way up into pools and then riffles so they can spawn up into Portage County. So they have to go a pretty good distance up that 7-mile stream. But when I talked to Alan Lieber about his fish tagging, I said, 24 inches, right? He goes, no, a little bit bigger, 36. Oh, I'm love to see that. But I don't see too many people catching them because when do they spawn? Anybody know? Autumn, when we can't fish them. So the smart guys wait until early spring and then they're downstream in the larger pools trying to catch the fish who didn't make it back to the lakes before winter, and now they're in these pools trying to overwinter there, and then they might catch a 24-incher, but usually not a 36-incher. Next. One of the first things we did with carnal blue butterflies is we want to try to find a way to expand populations. And we do know that the wild lupin is the only host plant that the larvae will feed upon. So we were collecting seed by hand, now we collect it by machine, and we're getting pounds and pounds of the seed, and then we scatter it, but we also wanted to find a way to efficiently get it out on established islands so we can move this metapopulation to mix with one that is at a greater distance. So we would set up experimental islands of habitat, and then the males and females that are dispersing might go, oh, look, there's a little patch here. So they start egg laying and staying there, and they make it across to the next population. And one of the goals in the federal recovery was to have the metapopulations not totally mixing, but occasionally sending genetic material back and forth to strengthen the two metapopulations, and that's what we've been doing. Texas A&M got $10,000 to try to find a way to propagate wild lupin, and we were doing it way before they were for pennies on the dollar. We would love to have that $10,000, but we're not a university. Okay. I've got a proposal to Madison right now to work with one species that's not listed here, and it's called the woolly milkweed. The milkweeds are declining across the entire nation. If you haven't seen the recent statistics on monarchs, I'm sorry, but we could see in our lifetime that migration no longer occurring. Wow. Scary. It's depressing. And one of the things is we have to have large blocks, 40 acres, of protected properties that have significant, healthy milkweed populations so they can make it to these places and get their populations going back and forth. Now, our butterflies are heading south. They're going all the way to Mexico. And then the ones coming back north never make it back to Wisconsin, but their genetic package does, because they'll make it up to Texas, start breeding there. Then another population will make it up to Iowa, and then they'll go through a complete cycle, and then from Iowa they'll make it up into Wisconsin or into Ontario, and then they'll breed here, and then those will make it all the way back in that fall migration. So it takes several generations to make it back north, but only one generation has to make it all the way back to Mexico. And their refuge down there is threatened also, because the more trees they take out, the more winds, the more temperature variations, so they can't overwinter very well. So there's many threats that face it. It's not just the corridor or the base habitats where they raise their young, but it's also their overwintering habitat. Yes?
In previous years, the population is almost crashing, but isn't it true that this past summer, it rebounded just a little bit?
Okay, regionally, yes. Yeah. You can talk across the entire range and you can say, we didn't see a thing in some places, and they say, I think we lost them. And in some places, we get little outbursts. And what my goal is I'm collecting common milkweed as much as I can, and I'm trying to restore certain blocks that we burn that are primarily milkweed, and I may just set them up as a no-burn refuge for that. When my wife was alive, we would go out and we would do larval counts, and we would easily count 40 to 50 larvae in a very short transect. Now, it may be 2 or 3. So the number of eggs being laid is a lot lower too. Yes?
Do they grow, do they use the relatives of the milkweed, like butterfly weed and
Oh yeah, those are all milkweed. So okay. Butterfly weed, world milkweed, common milkweed, purple milkweed, oval-leafed milkweed, blunt-leaf milkweed. We have a lot more species.
I blame our highway department.
Well, yes, herbicides and mowing.
It's just mowing the shoulders.
Yep. Oh yeah.
For the butterfly.
Oh yeah, it's all unnecessary.
Yeah.
But they have to. The insurance companies almost demand it because the deer, step out of the foliage, step into the ditch, and go, "Hey, let's wait for a car," and then we'll run out in front. And they can't see us in this higher grass. So we mow it, and then it's a little more difficult. So I know these decisions have a lot to do with the economics of the thing, but you have to have a sense of humor about it too. So adjacent property research, this is stuff that's our neighbors and what we're still doing there too. So if we have a red-shouldered hawk pair that's on my property, but they choose to nest in Emmons Creek Fisheries area, we still monitor them. Same thing with Cooper's hawks and other things. So when we're doing these surveys, we're crossing property boundaries to do it. Okay? So we can continue through that again. Okay, go back that one. You're talking at dinner tonight about the historical land use. Gives us a much better idea of what it was like. It's really neat when you can talk to a property owner and find out that their woodlot has never been, it was cut, but it was never plowed. It was open at one time. You can see some of the grandmother trees that are still there. A lot of it's overgrown, but you can maybe convince them to go in and say, let's remove this and open this up and maybe take a few of these larger trees out and we'll release the ground layer and maybe we'll do a 2-acre burn under the trees and you tell me what you think. And they'll go, whoa. And that's the way it was like in the 1840s and 1850s. It's not that hard. So on the bottom, that picture you see there, we did a cut where we removed 50% of the oak canopy because we had a series of aerial photographs from the first time that they started taking aerial photographs in the 1930s through the 50s and 60s, and we saw some trees that had survived from small to now massive trees. And we wanted to find out, okay, let's release these and keep these big guys going, but release these intermediate aged trees, and we did some stump counts to get an idea of how old these were. We had 4 age classifications in the savanna we're managing, and one tree we recognized was either an oak grub, a little guy, or an acorn in 1812. An oldie. So 202 years old, which is exciting, and I want to make sure, don't die on me. And then the other ones are in ranges that range from 90 to 70 years, and then 35 to 20 years, and then younger. So we don't want an even age stand. We want to try to break it up so if we do have some of these old codgers keeling over, we have some replacements to take in their spaces. But that's what you have to try to do, is manage the canopy open but not remove all the trees. Okay. Here's different species that we have nesting in our area, and we've banded in the area, which is a lot. We had a goshawk, which is not common in central Wisconsin, nesting in Hartman Creek State Park. And one year I monitored it, and I was going to go and band the 4 young, and I got to the tree and I saw there were spike marks in the tree, and went up and all 4 young were taken. But at that same time, I was a witness to some other things, so we had a federal investigation that was ongoing. I didn't know about it, and it was called Operation Falcon, and they were finding where people were stealing raptors and I should have to say selling, black market selling, peregrines, gyrfalcons in the Arctic. People would fly in for $150,000 to get into some of these rare birds and smuggle them out of Canada or Alaska for $500,000 so that they can sell them as falconry birds to the Middle East sheiks, I guess you have to say. So there's money in these things, and it gets a little scary when you think about the pressures on the resource that's out there. Okay? This gives you some idea. I did some property research. All the little black spots are Carner blue butterfly lupin sites that we mapped out in the early 1990s with all the students, and some of it's on private land, like this is Zinnick, and some other ones, and the rest is either on Emmons Creek Fisheries. This is private Schweitzer, Gischia. These are all private sites, and these are people who are cooperating for the recovery of Carner blue butterflies. Once they find out, and it is kind of neat, when you have a piece of property, you go, I don't know what's on it. Well, come on, let's look at it. So we look at it and go, you're kidding, I've got this and this. Is there anything I can do to keep it? Yeah, let's see what we can do to manage it. And some people are a little afraid of government, and government, the big government, scared me. The local people and the overall issue of restoring and conserving is still in our hearts and working cooperatively. So there has to be that level of trust. And I figure, hey, like I said, I can't take it with me, so this property is, got an option to the DNR first. So they can purchase the property, or if no one wants to buy the property, then they'll probably be willed to maybe the Nature Conservancy or some other for a tax write-off. And then it ends up in the DNR's hands anyway, but I'm gonna put up some money from my savings so that it will be used to manage the property when I'm no longer there. So an endowment for the property. The Natural Resources Foundation has those kinds of programs. You put money in there, and that money is only used for certain management aspects for this natural area. Okay? Butterfly and moth surveys, again, pretty big. Bird surveys, avocets right here in Waupaca area, and it's a bird from out west. But they find large wetland areas, like even the Fox brothers. We had avocets for 3 years in a row out of the 4 years we were surveying. So you'd be surprised what we have. We just have to get out there and look and capture them and you can see what they look like. Okay. Another one is one of my favorites, and I have a federal permit to continue to do that work on the Little Wolf River. We have a newly designated endangered species on the Little Wolf River, and it seems to be a pretty healthy population, and it's called a snuffbox mussel. And it's not much larger than the end of your thumb. That's all the bigger it gets. But it's a unique species because the female mussel takes its 2 valves and opens it up and invites fish to start poking around, and it gives off a chemical odor where the fish is attracted. And if a log perch, which is just a little forage fish that trout love to eat in cold water streams, if that log perch starts poking around and pushing those snuffbox out of the substrate, she will clasp upon the head of that fish to a point where it looks like the fish is dead, but the fish is stunned. And now the fish wiggle, 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 and now the fish is just laying there, and now the female will slowly loosen its tight grip around the head of that fish, and you'll start seeing the fish starting to use its gill covers, opercula, and gills to start respirating again. And in doing so, now she's pumping all of her larval muscles in across the gills, which clamp on like little Pac-Man, and are parasites. And they feed on the little log perch blood for about a month. And that log perch will go out and swim, and then once those are mature enough and have enough nutrition, they'll drop off in similar habitat and become a new snuffbox. And we have 51 species of freshwater mussels in Wisconsin. 19 of them are endangered. And they have to do a lot, or have everything to do with how healthy our fish populations are. Now, most of this crowd is old enough to remember me with hair. No, at least remember the threat we had in the 1970s when the DNR was going around to different streams and lakes and using rotenone and doing complete fish kills. And they proved at the time that the rotenone did not kill mussels. But they didn't inform the people that once we remove this high diversity of forage fish, darters, daces, top minnows, shiners, chubs, all of those are dependent on the reproduction of these mussels, and now they're gone. And now the mussel populations are crashing because we don't have that fish diversity anymore in the streams. So again, government, you go, was that the wise thing to do? Well, they were very ignorant at the time because they were pressured to work on trout or sturgeon or some other game fish, not looking at the overall ecology of the stream or the lake that they're working with. So mussels are really, they may be boring to some people, but they're a very exciting animal that doesn't move much and can be 130 years old in one spot. Okay, so again, central Wisconsin Lake prairies. You can go on. Right over here we go. Here's also here you can see. Go back up. Here's the snuffbox valve. Look at the teeth along the edge of the valve. That actually grips the slippery fish. And here are the gills with the Glochidia, or the larval mussels on them, and all of these mussels are collected as dead mussels. We do not collect live mussels at all. What we're doing is we're trying to study how dead mussel evidence in the stream may give us an indication as to how healthy the stream is with the living population. So we pick up all the dead ones, we look at the size, the age class, the diversity of those species, and then we look at the living ones that are still in a substrate, try to make a living, and we compare the two populations. And you
can see this is what they look like when you put your goggles on and look under the water. Here's a mussel with the valves and their filter feeding. And here is a log perch captured. You can see it right there. Here's the head, and here's clamped right across the top. So very, very interesting what we don't know in our world around us. Okay? Continue. Maybe we can fly through some of these. We've gone and educated and worked with these different groups. Okay? You can see we've done a lot of publishing. So we've published, sorry, it's okay. It's okay, so, where are we? Here we are. So you can see the different years of publications and reports, engineering survey reports, and then here's the types of studies we've done those and the different species we've researched in those groups. So you get an idea that it's important to let people know what you're doing and get them out. So, yes, ma'am.
Do you have some kind of a library or archives on the property that houses all of this?
I married the right person. Within 2 years, we had a master carpenter built in bookshelves, because when I married my wife, I didn't realize I was inheriting a library on her end, but she knew how many books I still had in boxes in my home, so we have probably 2,000 volumes in our home, and certain sections of my office are just very technical, broken down. So if I'm working with mussels, I've got a complete library of mussels for the whole continent, and then also technical bulletins, that kind of thing. So we're trying to keep up with, it's difficult, and I'm hoping that in the future I can build a building that's separate, the Deborah Ann Martin Memorial Education Center, and then we'll put all that stuff in there. And it'll be out of the home, but in a separate building for that kind of use. Okay? Special projects, we write grants. There are grant money out there, and we did some things like Henry's elfin larval rearing. They knew nothing about what the larvae looked like, so on a statewide network, people, butterfly, hey, you think I'm nuts? Oh my gosh, there's people out there who are just into certain things, and they say, hey Bob, would you do this? Bring them by. So we set up an insectary in my kitchen, which is a perfect place for it. We raised almost 2,000 carnival butterflies from eggs in my kitchen, and that was very important for recovery on a national basis, because that's what they're doing in Ohio and other places. They're using our methodology, but we didn't know what Henry's elfin looked like. So people who knew Henry's elfin adults would go around and can you imagine going around with a lens and looking at leaves and finding ova or eggs on leaves of a plant, so they knew what the plant was now, and they're putting it in a cup, identifying it, and driving it 200 miles to my porch, and in the shade, I go, oh, this is from, okay, got it. So then I'd have to set it up, and then we'd have to rear the larvae after that egg hatched and find out what it was. And we finally found out what their larvae look like, what they feed on, and we learned more about the conservation of that animal, because it was totally unknown before. Okay, so these are some of the projects we've worked on locally. Carnival butterfly rearing, larval responses to fire, carnival butterfly larval following logging, dispersal behavior, lupin propagation. Actually, there was that big scare in 2006 to 2008 about avian flu, so we were part of that network, and we were capturing birds, and sorry bird, we have to poke you in the cloaca, and we have to get a little cloacal swab, and we have to pull some feathers, and all of that material is sent to Los Angeles, and then they tell us, what was really neat about that is we didn't find any avian flu, but we found other vectors, other viruses that birds are carrying that they never knew were out there, which is pretty cool. Okay, here's the Henry's Elfin Project. Now you know what the larvae look like. Asian bittersweet, the DNR doesn't want to always regulate, folks, but they're worried about some of these invasive plants. So the Asian bittersweet can hybridize with our American bittersweet. It's much more aggressive. We don't want it in our yards. So a nursery in southwestern Wisconsin claimed that it had a bittersweet that had seeds that were not viable. So they sent us about 2,000 seeds, and we did a series of different exposures on a series of those seeds. We compared them to our American bittersweet to get a better idea, and we found that
yes, the viability is low, but it's not zero viability. So they are regulating that plant now as an invasive, and it shouldn't be purchased or used. Go with America. Okay. Project Salamander. Again, catching salamanders, marking them, learning more about the salamander diversity in our backyards. Very few people know that they spend most of the time underground. We call them mole salamanders, but they have to enter lakes or ephemeral ponds just as the ice is melting. So as the soil is thawing out, they're climbing up, even walking across snow fields to get to a lake or a pond, then entering the water and spawning as that lake or pond is melting away. So you probably don't want to wade in a lake with that ice cold water, but the salamanders are spawning under those conditions. Really kind of cool. Like I said, this is one we're still ongoing now. There's a big initiative in Wisconsin, especially along Lake Michigan and Lake Superior shorelines, where we get concentrations of neotropical birds falling out during spring migration, stopping over, getting filled up, and getting their fat reserves again to make it all the way back up into the boreal forest or even into the Arctic. And we're trying to learn more about what habitat conditions on these properties attract these birds, how long the birds are held there. We have to weigh the birds. We look at fat reserves under their skin. So we just blow their feathers up and we classify it as a 0 to a 3. Hey, you're a fatty. Hey, okay, fine. So we classify that and we find out that, gee, this bird looks pretty slim, but 3 days later we capture it and it's gained grams of weight just because it's eating insects or berries or something like that. So it's fascinating. So we put these special traps up in the canopy to capture these early flying insects that a lot of these warblers are fly catching on their way north or south. Okay. Volunteer opportunities. So if you're looking at becoming a master naturalist, I'll talk that up a little bit. There are many opportunities to get more involved in the natural world, and these are some opportunities that we've been involved in. You can volunteer in sturgeon. I don't know if they're doing much with CWD anymore with deer, but they did some good fawn work recently. They're still doing some fawn work for fawn survival. The Wisconsin Bird Conservation Initiative are still looking for people to do owl counts in the evening. What a perfect time to take your spouse out late at night and listen to owls on a date. Same thing with nightjars, listening for whippoorwills or nighthawks. Marsh hawks are a little harder. You got to get waders on and look really sexy and go way out in those marshes with your GPS and turn on your speakers and see if you can call some rare birds in the marshes to you, and same thing with grassland birds. So there's a variety of ways of going out and helping the regulators, the DNR, law enforcement, as well as different groups like Timberwolf Information Network, trying to tell the DNR they need to use good science in managing a wolf population. So that's what we've been doing. Okay, I think here we are with Twin and all the different workshops. If you're interested in wolf workshops, the Bird Conservation Initiative. Oh yeah, we have had some really good luck where students have started with us at the field station and then get involved with the FFA and what's called WICA, Wisconsin Center for Environmental, Wisconsin Center for Academically Talented Youth, and they have applied for either grants to continue work or for certain awards based on the work they've done at the field station. So we've had quite a few national award winners because of their work at the field station. Okay? And some of the awards that we've received doing our work there. Any questions? We'll call it quits. I think that's it, right? Yep. Okay. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Mr. Swanson, 2 questions.
Or maybe 3.
Okay, 3 questions.
Maybe good, I was recognized as you when I first came in here. Secondly,
I don't know if that's good.
Secondly, I have an oldest granddaughter who's in your class.
Oh, yes.
And I ask her every time I see her, what are you learning in your science class from Mr. Welch? And she, until recently, said, well, he's telling stories all the time. Now I know why you're telling your stories, because it's all about your station.
Well, it's not just that, but if we're on, let's say, disease-causing pathogens that are protists that
could cause us great discomfort, like Giardia lamblia,
Oh, yeah.
in dirty water that you don't filter and you don't boil. I have some personal experience with that. So I may indicate, this is what that organism does to you in your gut, and you get it in there, okay? So, you know, the kids go, okay, I don't want to drink impure water now, I want potable water, okay, good. So what I'm finding is when I tell stories, the kids tend to link to the idea of its relevance, number one, and number two, they tend to remember the information longer because it's a story, instead of it's just book learning stuff. And I think book learning is very important. Hey, our textbooks have been taken away. We have no more textbooks. The textbooks I have are 10 years old. They're falling apart. I feel like I'm in a third world country because they're telling us to have textbooks that are on the web. If you try to get into the web to use your tablet, I'm not into technology, the whole thing shuts down. It may take 30 minutes for your 30 students to get up to where you need to be on the right page to read from the electronics. Where a real hardcover book you can fall asleep across your chest is right there. So I have 2 sets of textbooks that I'm still using, and I'm looking to teach for 6 more years, as long as I still have love in that statement. I love what I do. But I'm going to keep reading out of a book, okay? And I want kids to learn that books are important. Not just e-books. I don't know. I have to have a book.
Thank you very much.
Is that just 2 questions?
That's enough.
This was a fabulous program. Thank you.
Thank you.